Both of them aren't speaking, just one.
Both of them, you say, or just one?
Just one.
Okay. Okay, we'll have open the meeting. Before I open the meeting, I want to remind everyone that if you would like to speak on behalf of this petition, you must sign in to the podium. If there are multiple people that would like to speak, each person will be limited to 3 minutes. Please remember to keep the comments respectful and brief. If a concern has been brought up before, please refrain from discussing the same thing. Meeting called to order. Regular meeting, January 8th, 2025. Roll call, please.
Mike Nichols,
Here.
Scott Highlander,
Here.
Isaac Chavez, Charles Bates,
Here.
Sam Payne.
Here. Suppose we're supposed to have a swearing in of officer.
Not today. We'll wait for Isaac to get here, so everybody will be here to elect officers.
Okay.
We can do that next month.
Swearing in that. We're not going to swear him in next month.
Swear anybody today, at least
already
maybe
got-
not.
They already got sworn in.
Okay, that's done. Approval of minutes. We're gonna table those until the next meeting, being that Isaac's not here and we don't have a quorum of the members that were here. Is there a conflict of interest about the present petition?
No.
Nope. Okay, new business. Public hearing docket number 2025-001. Petitioner is Juan Prieto of Affordable Home Solution Corporation requesting a standard variance for off-street parking for the apartment complex. Don?
Thanks, Sam. Normally I'm standing. I've been having a lot of lower back problems this week, so I'm going to be sitting down today, if it's all right.
That's approved.
The applicant is Juan Pareto. The address is 206 South 4th Street in Frankfort, Indiana. Said petitioner is requesting an approval of a variance of developmental standards for approval to not allow off-street parking instead of the required 2 off-street parking spaces per dwelling unit. The zoning is of C residential, and the site characteristics is located as part of lot number 1 in block number 4 in the Cohen and Crothers additions to the city of Frankfort, as per plot thereof recorded in Plot Book 1, pages 10 and 11, in the offices of the Recorder of Clinton County, Indiana. Except 60 feet in uniform width off the entire north end thereof, more commonly known as 206 South 4th Street. The need for the variance arises because the owner has tried to rent 10 parking spaces from the owner of the empty lot behind his property and could not settle on a price, and the lot that the property or that the apartment is sitting on is not large enough for any off-street parking. The ordinance reference is 308, off-street parking and loading. Under 30802, the number of parking spaces shall be specified in Table D based upon the parking classification of the use listed in Table A1, parking class A through Z, page M26. On Table D, required parking classification is A, which requires 2 per dwelling unit or pad or campsite plus 1 per home occupancy. So he would be required to have, with 6 apartments, 12 off-street parking. A variance for developmental standards may be approved under this section if, after a public hearing, the board makes findings of facts in writing that 1, the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. This building is in a C residential district, which multifamily living is allowed, and the building has been set empty for at least 3 years. Per the Strategic Residential Planning Analysis, Economic and Residential Outlook Study, multifamily living is in need in our community. The project will add 5 units, now I believe 6, and will help clean up the neighborhood, and it will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. The use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. This property is adjacent to the central business district to the north and B residential to the south. The owner plans on a complete remodel which should not affect in a substantially adverse manner the use and value of the area adjacent to the property. 3, the strict application of the terms in the zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property. The Unified Development Ordinance, which requires 2 off-street parking per dwelling unit, will not allow this apartment new life. The owner has tried to complete a deal with the property owner to the west or behind his building, and the 10 rental spaces were too high in price and would make the rent too high for the occupancy. This lot is not large enough to place 10 off-street parking spaces, as the apartment was placed before the required 67 ordinances, which then required 1 parking space per dwelling. I have spoken with Jason Forsyth, the street superintendent, to place approximately 9 angled parking spaces in front of this property, which will help account for the required off-street parking, and request no parking on the east side of 4th Street. The street is wide enough that by placing these angled spaces and no parking on the east side, it will not negatively affect traffic. The strict applications of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of this property. I will say that Juan has done his due diligence in trying to come up with off-street parking. The challenge that he has, besides of not being able to rent an open spot in the back lot, is that there is a section behind his property that's probably about 15 feet in width. I'm assuming at one time was a alleyway, Sam?
With an alleyway, there's a house that's set back there. It was owned by Don Rapp at one time.
That was-
Ron Masters bought the property, tore the house down. It was condemned. And Ron took the house down, and that's the reason that's set there.
So it's still an alleyway then, it's not
Alleyway
been
that
vacated.
Runs north and south, and there's one that runs east and west.
So with those being in place, it really limits his property or his building to be just on the property itself. We went down with a couple of street department, I did, personnel, and we measured out some angled parking because 4th Street in that area is a lot wider than normally as you continue south down 4th Street. And with the width being what it is, the angled parking would be able to be in there, angled parking 8 foot wide, approximately 16 foot in length, would be able to be placed there as long as there was no parking on the east side of 4th Street. We have not been before the Board of Works to request this action because we wanted first to see if the Board of Zoning Appeals would allow him not having off-street parking on his facility. If that got passed, then we will go and proceed to the Board of Works, which would be meeting this coming Monday, and ask the request of putting angled parking in front of his place. The angled parking will not be just for his facility, but it will help offset parking for his facility. I don't think that being any parking on the street that we want to be able to say this is only parking for this apartment complex, being the fact that we could be taking parking away from across the street. So I think that we want to keep it open. It's going to be a first come, first served basis, but you've got to believe that with 9 parking facilities, the apartment complex would probably get first grabs at it as the evening would progress. Don't know that to be true, but that's how we're setting this thing up. Juan is here for any questions in case there are any, and our recommendation is that in the opinion of the staff, that the developmental standards should be approved subject to the findings of facts in this staff report. And we're ready for questions.
Ones you want to speak?
Good evening to everyone. First of all, my name is Juan Prieto. I'm coming from Lafayette, Indiana. So we started working here in Frankfurt. Honestly, I see a good opportunity to come over here in Frankfurt. There's a lot of work for us on my trade. I'm at do construction business, and I saw a good opportunity on that building. Unfortunately, as Don explained, the parking is an issue right now. I just want to make a note that legally that property is already been as a multifamily. It's nothing that we are building, nothing new. It's nothing like we just changing the use of the building. The building is already been using for multifamily. Everything started when I tried to renovate the building, and I came here to this building permit office. I want to make the building look better. Of course, it's going to be benefit the block, the street. I'm hearing that some of the neighbors been complaining about the looking of the building, that it's been leaving behind, not repairs, nothing like that. And I personally don't want to change it anything, but it was a good time and good opportunity to update plumbing, electrical, windows, and all of that. It's nothing that we are changing. It was already there. And I'm assuming the ordinance was already in place, but I believe the building is from 1890. So I believe that one was before the ordinance came on about those spaces. So what we definitely want to improve the building. And that's how I came over here and say, well, I want to update electrical, plumbing, and all of that, so make it look good, the building. And as Don say, not only here, Lafayette also has a source of rental properties for the community. And I'm thinking that is a good opportunity for people to looking for place to live. And if you guys approve the parking or you don't oppose, that's going to help everybody, not only me as a owner, because of course taxes of the property, the value of the property will be higher because it's going to be everything updated. And it's nothing that I didn't try to find a solution before we came here. I tried to contact the neighbor behind the lot, but the prices is, as a businessman, it's no money right there. Honestly, I want to say the truth, and for that price, it's no business for me. Honestly, I do my living fixing things, and I do my living same way renting property, so it's like, it's no business, honestly. But if I talk to the building department and say, well, there's an opportunity, that's why I decide to purchase the building and say, well, it's like I said, this town is good. It has a potential to keep growing. And honestly, if we got some flexibilities to give the people who wants to fix their houses, I think that's going to be a better town and attract more investors in town. I've been working with 2-3 investors here in town who buys a properties and fix it, and I think it's just the benefit for everyone, not just me. That's the thing I want to mention. Say, no, it's not just the benefit of collect the renting. It's just for, I'm assuming, for everybody, city, people in the town, and everyone has a benefit in that. So I just want to say that if we can work out something, especially help me and help the town, and of course, it's shores and rentals everywhere, not just here. The reason I moved here is I saw potential here in Frankfurt. There is a lot of work over here. There is a lot of properties needs to be fixed, and that's why we are coming and trying to move here to Frankfurt.
Can I ask, this is going to be how many apartments?
It's a total of 6 apartments.
6 apartments.
Correct. Yep.
And the building started out, has it always been 6, Don?
Yeah, I think it's actually been more at one time. And Sam, didn't that used to be the original building of that? Was it like a stayover for the railroad, for people coming in on the railroad, or it just seems like it's been there for such a long period of time that it was.
I remember it being 6 apartments.
You don't remember being 6? There were, you have one that's kind of separated by itself along the alleyway, and then you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inside. It's not been, there's nobody been in it. I've been, my job for 5 years going 6. It's been empty all those years.
Now, there was, Charles, you probably remember too, there's been quite a few incidents at that property. But I don't know that I'd ever been inside it to see how many numbers there was. I know when he had that, I believe we had to close it down for sanitary reasons and other things, but I don't know how many apartments.
Yeah, it was a mess inside. There's no doubt about that. And actually, Juan has become about the 4th person in trying to resurrect this building, and a lot of the other ones have gone astray. And I think a lot of it has to do with the off-street parking, of having 2 off-street parking.
Street parking was an issue, and when Don Rapp owned the property that got tore down, parking was a big issue because it was parking on his lot and causing problems there. So there were several times we had to go down there and have them to move their vehicles by sitting on Don's property and cutting into the yard and what have you, because there's never been good parking there.
So me personally, I think that part of the whole reason we have the UDO is that we have a goal for the city, right? And we laid that out, and that was approved. Part of that is we need multifamily dwellings. I think part of the problem in the past is people have been, many years ago, people turned single-family dwellings into multifamily dwellings. And that went unchecked for years. And that is a problem that if we don't address it today, it won't get fixed in 20 years, which is the whole goal of this. We have to turn the ship one remodel at a time. And C residential says 750 minimum square feet living area. What is the minimum living area for? I think I calculated at 4,000 square feet. What's the?
Yeah, well, 3,600. I think it's 3,600 square feet. The whole.
So he was asking for each apartment. Do you know what?
About 800 square feet by apartment. So that's somewhere right there, 800 to 700 roughly.
Is that something that would be verified by your office before
Yes.
you allowed it to?
I think that the guys have actually been in on one of your apartments at on the lower level, close to the alley. I think has Rob been? I know Rob's been in the building.
Yep.
And have been inspecting it as you've been moving along on it. So, but yes, that would be something that would be required as we go through it.
And there's 0 parking on the property.
Yeah, this building basically sits on the property.
Do we know how many times it's been remodeled? I mean, it looks like the east-west part of the building was an addition, and then there's a south part of the building that backs directly up to the alley, if I understand what you were saying. Are those all remodels that have happened over time?
This building has not been remodeled, even touched, the last 5 years that I've been in office.
Okay.
So this is actually the first opportunity to bring life to this building. And I mean, the option is that if off-street parking is not given a variance, then the only thing left for this, you couldn't even do a single-family dwelling here, because you would still be required to have 2 off-street parkings, and there isn't room for that even on this property.
So how are we saying a 6-family dwelling is acceptable, but a single family isn't?
We're saying, well, in reality, a 6-family isn't acceptable with off-street parking. It's allowed because it's C residential, and C residential allows multifamily dwellings to be in place. The only thing that would keep it from not being able to be used as a multifamily dwelling is the off-street parking. That's why he's come for a variance.
Where's he gonna put it? There's not enough room on that lot to put 6 additional parking spaces.
No, that's why we went and measured for angle parking in the street to try to help offset parking for this facility.
Then he's not gonna meet the green space requirements if he does that.
It won't bother any of the green space because we're going to stay in the street. The width of the street I should have measured. I did not measure it. The width of the street right through there is really wide. And I had 2 street department guys come with me before Christmas, and we measured the ability to put angle parking in. We think we can get 9 angle parking stalls in, and by not allowing parking, if the Board of Works will allow that, on the east side of 4th Street, the 9 parking stalls will fit and traffic can still go both ways. It shouldn't affect traffic whatsoever. And what we're saying is, even though he needs 12, we can get 9 off-street or 9 parking spaces that never existed before. Beforehand, you're looking at parallel parking, and the most it could have been there is 5. So we're adding 4 more parking facilities for this facility, even though it would be required to have 12. We're going to have at least 9 on the street.
I'm just going to cite the purpose, the 103.4, to lessen and avoid congestion in the public ways. It's,
I'm just here to bring you facts and figures. It's your job to decide whether it can move forward or not.
I didn't bring it.
I might have read it.
I read it last
earlier
night,
today.
Charles. I should have brought it with me.
I think that it shifts. Now we're asking for 12 instead of 9. The 9 would only be 4.5 units, which is already 1 more than was asked, and then a 6th one now. I think it completely takes all of the burden off of the property and puts it onto the street, which I think is contrary to what the whole guiding principle of this is, in my opinion.
I have to agree with that. I read through there last night and I was thinking the same thing. I can't.
If you deny this, you'll have to do your findings.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll have to do your findings. It's not a big deal. I mean, I'm just saying that you'll have to readjust the findings to make it so that you can not pass it if that's what you're deciding to do.
Can I add something?
Sure.
Well, I think you're saying is creating a conflict on the street. That's what you going by that, saying that if they or you guys approve the angle park, it's going to create a conflict on the traffic on the street. That's your most concern.
Sure. So what I cited is 103.4, which is the purpose of our Unified Development Ordinance. And it's the 4th one, and it says to lessen and avoid congestion in the public ways. So the reason why they go through and say in C residential, you are required to have 2 off-street parking per unit is because when you have a high-density house, you're trying to shift all of that congestion from the property onto the roadway. And I understand the width of South 4th Street. I've been on it several times. You put parallel parking there, and it's going to completely adjust traffic that's coming south off of 28. It's going to, and you're taking away 2 parking spots that could be in front of the other residences, which are open street parking.
And the other thing about this is, my feelings is when you started the remodel, when you went to get the permit, at that time, we should have caught it then as it being a 6-unit apartment instead of a 4-unit apartment, which, had they said no, you can only have 4, then the requirement may have been easier to do on the street than what it is now.
Okay, let me ask you this.
Our ordinance used to say multifamily dwellings, we were supposed to reduce the size or eliminate multifamily dwellings. That is in our comprehensive plan for the city.
Well, let me say this. I think legally the address is already there. The house is being like that. I could be not trying to do anything, not even fix it, just kind of touch up things and keep it running, honestly.
But you've pulled permits to
Because
adjust.
I want to do the right thing and play by the book with you guys, and I would like to see if there is some flexibility, because honestly, it is nothing like when I request a new address and I request a new building, that is completely different, because I think there is something called a grandfather in some places, where it's already there is nothing that we created. It was just there.
So what was the last permitted occupancy of this residence?
It was a multifamily dwelling.
Do we have a occupancy number and
I,
any date that it was last permitted? Because if so, if we don't have a permit in
I
the
know
past, then
I don't have
how
any,
is it?
I don't have anything over the last 5 years because, of course, nobody was in it. Well, there was one apartment being rented along the alleyway, but when they moved out, then it all closed up. But I cannot tell you honestly how many apartments were in there because it's always been empty for the 5 years that I've been here.
If 30 years ago somebody didn't pull a permit and updated this building and changed it, then that was an illegal permit. Like some work was done without a permit. So whatever is there now, without knowing its heritage and what it was granted under,
Well,
then we have the ability to say, no, right now, this is where it needs to become.
well, first of all, I don't believe in the grandfather clause. I don't think there's such a thing. It would be a non-conforming use, and a non-conforming use can be sold as a non-conforming use as long as they don't make it bigger or make it smaller. But in this situation, being the fact that it is zoned C residential, multifamily dwellings are permitted to be in that building. They can have, well, it would be the number that would be able to have off-street parking. The off-street parking is the only thing that keeps it. If he could have come up with the deal with the people that own the property on the backside that had nothing on it to rent 10 parking spaces, we wouldn't be here this evening. But that couldn't come to play. And so that's what brought it here. And so, yeah, they can comment because I think it's them that they try to work out a deal. I don't know anything about it. All I know is that it couldn't be worked out. So once that came to play, that brought us here to see about a variance.
So, to your comment, you say you're trying to set it up for 6 units, correct? So, if we would do the variance for the off-street parking, Don's already mentioned that there's not enough space to do for the 6 units. So, could we have him do just the 4 units in that building? I mean, since he's going to be in there reconstructing a lot of it anyway. I don't know.
I don't think we get to, I mean, can we propose that as a?
I've had, it could potentially be a recommendation. We've had that conversation. Juan and I have had that conversation. I try to keep all the multifamilies that had large number of apartments in it. For example, the Washington Street, the big blue bomb down there. I fight everybody that comes in. They want to put 8. Nope, you can put 4 maybe, but that'd be about all because of the parking offset that would be required. So I try my best to at the beginning to keep these numbers down low. To one, try to get the off-street parking taken care of, and 2, so that it doesn't become a fire death trap. I'm always concerned about that too.
Sam and I have walked through several of these, and
I'm not opposed to find a solution. I'm not here to try to force anybody and not to try to say, well, that's what I want to do. I'm just trying to find a solution, and as just watching the benefit for the community. Honestly, if all the neighbors would be thinking on their concern that there was going to be a traffic problem in traffic, I think should be here because everyone received a letter that it was the thing to do. Honestly, they are the ones who live right there and the ones who's going to fighting with that traffic and all of that, and I will be arise problem and saying, well, honestly, if somebody come to next to my house and try to build we built a, what's that called, clinic for treatment for addiction close to a big apartments, and the majority of the business owner and the majority of the people was living there, they show the same day because they say, I'm not going to allow to having something in my business like that. And in this case, honestly, I don't want to disrespect nobody, but the people who is going to live in that area should be the most one to be most concerned. And this is for looking to fix the street and fix to create a benefit for the community. Is that
I understand your intention is to bring use back to this building. The issue I have is that based on the UDO, this is trying to put too many dwelling units on a lot that was never meant to hold that many. The only way we can adjust that in the future is with this, one building at a time. This is a perfect example of we had 6 units on, there's literally no spot on this property to put a parking spot, correct?
That's correct.
But 20 years from now, we can't, if we allow this, 20 years from now, that's going to be a 6-unit apartment with street parking all over. Like, that's not the goal for this. That's the reason why we have all of these recommendations, is not just for who lives there now, it's for who's going to buy the house in 20 years,
correct? Yep.
right? Who's
So what's your book say about how many units then we can have it? What's
how many units
what
can you
would
have
be-
in C residential?
Oh, it's multifamily, so, I mean, whatever is allowed per resident size and the ability to park off street. If I can make a recommendation, I would call upon the folks in the back who want to talk, because,
I was gonna get to.
yeah, they have the empty lot that would resolve all of these issues.
I mean, I can read off of the table for the district performance. Minimum lot, 6,000 square feet. Minimum lot width, 50. Minimum lot area per family is 2,000 square feet. Minimum total living area per unit is 750 square feet. Impervious surface ratio is 0.5, which means if your building is 1, you have to have an additional 0.5 of drainage. Impervious surface. Minimum front yard is 15 feet. Minimum side yard's 5 with an asterisk. Minimum rear is 15, and minimum distance between the structures is 10, as well as off-street parking. So, like, there's a table that delineates, if you have a property this size, here's the things you can meet. How many families can you shove in there? How many buildings, how many residences can you place there?
So the board would be kind of find how many units we can have it?
I think that would adjust the whole calculation. If you came back and said this is a 3-unit dwelling, and now you're asking for 2 off, you know what I mean? That could change the whole outlook of this equation. That's not, all I have is what's in front of me, which said 5, but now it's 6. So, do we want to do the comments?
Let Renee come up and.
I'm going to be talking on behalf of Mr. Alanis. I do think that it's a great opportunity for the city of Frankfurt. I know that we do need more housing. He is the owner of the 601 West Walnut Street, which right now it's a barber shop. That's what it's being used for. Mr. Juan came and dealt with Luis Alanis. He's the one that's running the barber shop, although he's not the one that owns the property. He is Mr. Rene Alanis's son, so he's kind of been the middleman of communicating with him, and he came by to say that he needed to see if he can negotiate something with finding parking. He wanted, essentially, I guess, to rent out the property or buy the property off of him. Obviously, for us, it wouldn't be convenient to sell it to him whenever Mr. Juan says that this is a great business opportunity, but there is no money, like he wasn't going to be gaining a lot of money if he rented out. I don't believe to be that true, that if he starts renting from us, because we decided that we didn't want to sell, we would rather rent to him the parking spots.
El problema es que si le van a dejar parquear, el problema es que al rato lo va a rentar y el problema no va a ser con él, va a ser con los renteros.
Yeah, so we just think that he never came back to negotiate with Luis or Mr. Alanis to see what he said. It was too, I guess he just said right now that it was too high, that there was no business being made in it. I've done my calculations and I think there's business to be made in it. He just didn't want to have to finagle and make a contract with us. And we don't want this to go for because we don't want it to affect the barber shop. There's already limited space parking for our barber shop, and we don't want the tenants to be parking in his barber shop. And now the problem isn't even going to be with him, it's going to be with the people who are living there. So it's going to be too much tension. We don't want to have problems with the people who live just right behind us or live right behind the barber shop. We don't want that to be an ongoing issue. And then I know that you guys had mentioned about the street parking, about doing the diagonal. I don't really think that's a good idea. Luis couldn't make it today because he's sick. He actually went to the doctor today, and he has pneumonia, so he couldn't make it today, so I'm here on his behalf. But they're there all day. They work from 8 to 6 almost every single day, so they can see the traffic, the ongoing traffic. People have to yield. When they're on 4th Street, they have to yield to get into the street because it's just we don't feel like it's wide enough. And I feel like if you're doing that diagonal parking, I don't think that's going to fix the problem of traffic, personally.
Is there any provision, this is kind of for the board, is there any provision that if they have a civil contract for renting space and what happens when they decide to stop renting it to him?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, this isn't just for, we have a solution because he's renting parking. This is the zoning, the UDO says if you have a 6-family dwelling, they have to have the parking on the lot. It doesn't have anything to do with, well, we rented it from the neighbor, but what happens when that contract fails?
Well, I'm going to adjust that a little bit. They don't have to have parking on the lot. They have to have off-street parking. There's an apartment complex on South Main, corner of Main and South Street, and they bought a lot across the street that allowed them to put in their parking for off-street parking for that facility. So they just got to have a place to park off-street. And so that's what made Juan go to the Alanises to see about the ability to rent a space for their facilities.
So on that as an example, what happens when they decide to sell that lot?
Well, that's a great question. I can't answer that. In honesty, it does become a challenge, and I'm not doesn't agree with you at all. Whenever I have conversations, I never worry about what's happening at the time. I worry about what's going to happen in the future. So that's where I always try to put my hat on.
I think they would have to work that out with an attorney and a contract of some sort where it's
Have to be deeded almost.
where it states here's what happens, and if this property sells, they have the right to maintain that contract until it's in. Something in that, because they couldn't do it just short time. I mean, you'd have to have a contract that says this property will be rented for X number of years and shall be good until this gentleman sells or the previous owner sells. Once they sell, then this contract is.
Mr. Juan hasn't came back to us to negotiate anything with us. I think.
I guess what I'm saying, I don't even know if that satisfies the problem.
Right. Or he's not even tried to buy, which really we wouldn't sell.
I mean, I think the issue, and we're coming about it from a parking, is that this is a 6-family dwelling proposed on a lot that doesn't seem suitable for it. So,
Any further discussion from our?
No.
Okay, I move that the public hearing be closed. Any discussion from the board members? Don, you said we had to come up with, if we was gonna go vote this down.
You have to make at least one of these, if you were going to put this down, you have to make at least one of these findings in a negative format so that you could then deny it based on the finding.
With that, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we deny it based on number 3. The strict application of the zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of this property.
A second.
Got a motion, I got a second by Charles.
Mike Nichols,
Aye.
Scott Highlander,
Aye.
Charles Bates,
Aye.
Sam Payne.
So I'm guessing then that you want number 3 to basically say that that the strict applications of the terms of the zoning will result in practical difficulties in the use of property, that that you do not agree with the fact that requiring 2 off-street parking dwelling units would not allow this property to be used proper. I mean, we have to have a reason for not just the fact that the strict application. You have to have a reason. It's like I gave you a reason why I thought it was because of the strict application. It caused him a challenge to be able to do what it is he's doing. So I think that you've got to make it read that,
Are we allowed to discuss this?
yes, you are.
So I think something along the lines of the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance dictate that the lot is not large enough to place the required 12 parking spaces. Would that suffice? Does that suffice?
I can second that or add that to the motion.
Now, Don, I do have a question. If this gentleman would come back and say we will shorten or make the units less than 6, would it be brought back to this board to have another hearing to?
I'm going to throw that into your hands, and that is if he were to say, hey, I'm only going to do 4, are you going to allow him 8 off-street parking places versus the 12 that would be required? So, I mean, it's still coming down to where is he going to put the vehicles that are going to be living in the facility. It actually is coming down for him to decide whether or not, if there is property in the area across the street, across the alley, that can be purchased where he can make it into a parking facility. That sounds to be the answer to the problem, because to do a contract doesn't mean that it can always stay in place. So I think that he's down to trying to figure out how he's going to get off-street parking for his facility.
Correct.
What did the street department say?
Yeah, when we went down before Christmas, because of the width, it's pretty wide down there, that you could, if you eliminated, and this is from the street department, not me, that if you eliminated parking on the east side from just the alleyway to Wabash or Walnut Street, that would then allow traffic to go both ways and not be affected with the angled
And
parking.
away from one and giving to the other.
You're
basically
taking,
what
you're
it's-
taking about 3 away on one side, and you're basically putting them on the angle side of the street.
Can't tell you the number of times I've routed a semi down South 4th Street because it's the only one that they can fit down.
Yep.
It's dozens. And you start to encroach towards Walnut, then you cut the turning radius. I mean, this, I don't even know if that's a question for us to deal with right now. You were asking about if 4 units was the answer. At some point, this house was added onto. You can clearly see from this Google Street View. I mean, there's a window that directly abuts an entry door, which would be on.
It's been added on to.
At some point, somebody's gonna have to undo some of this to create space for whatever the future use of this property would be. I mean, that's not, I don't think that's our purview to tell them, but we have a guiding principle that says, in the future, moving forward, this should be our minimum goal.
Absolutely. That house was, I come up here under Don's administration, and that house had been
Cobbled.
starting to work on it at that time when I was code enforcement.
Yeah.
So it's been a long while ago.
That's been over 20 years ago.
That's when,
And
that's when the back end of it, I remember they were working on it at that time.
Yeah, I don't know much about it. Grace, make sure you circle denied on the decision of the board, and then they'll still need to sign this, and then we'll make adjustment to the number 3 based on their request.
Any further business?
I do not. The only thing that we want to request, the office wants to request, and that is when you get information from Grace, the packets from Grace that talk about a meeting, please respond back so that we know who's going to be here, make sure that we have a quorum. We were in doubt on whether or not we were going to have enough because we only had 1 or 2 persons that responded back, and so it's always nice to know ahead of time that we're going to have enough people here so that we can at least warn off the folks who are coming in that we won't be meeting. So please make sure that once you get your packet, if you'll just send back that you will be attending or you will not be attending, that would help tremendously.
Absolutely, I can do that.
I can do that. I see his name on there. She got the wrong address.
It was a surprise. Sam. Surprise.
Surprise.
We will elect new officers at our next meeting, which could be in February based on if anything comes before. I will not call for a meeting just to elect officers. I'll do it when we have business to come in front of us.
If there's no further business before this meeting, I make this meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was denied. So now we're back to square one, or I should say you are back to square one to get off-street parking for your facility. Now we're looking at
I'm good.
a lot that's empty that can be purchased or somewhere close to your building, a lot that you can purchase,
Nope.
tear the building down and make a
One
lot
up
out
to
of it.
FPD, we'll give you some workouts.
That's where you're at right
One of
now.
those ellipses. So I ride that every day.